All right, Lori, we're going to start the meeting. We'll leave the attendance on your desk. Any public comments? Seeing none. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of July 17th, 2023?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Scott?
Second it.
Rosa? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Project update status, Ryan?
Alrighty, so pool's closed for the season. We're going to be working up there over the next several weeks, getting everything cleaned up and starting the prep before, I hate to say it, winter comes. So our basketball program is in the works. We have some challenges to overcome, but we're working on that. The dog park shelter, we'll discuss that one under dog park update. And then Powell Gravel has been contacted to finish up that walking path at Park Point. I talked to them again today. They're extremely busy at the moment, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, they'll be in contact with me to set a meeting out there at the park to give me an updated quote so we can finish that project off for the year. And then I'm bringing it up. I don't have all the details on it, but it's out of Milky Way. We have a little bit of a bathroom sewer problem, but I don't know all the full details with it. I know some backed up, but I don't know if either one of you had any insight on.
We're not sure. Initially, we had Hartwood come out and take a look at the. We had Hartwood come out and take a look at the pump. The pump is fine. We're looking into possibly upgrading the grinder, and then at the same time, in at least next year's budget or any budget soon to be, making it essentially a dual system, so that because of the increased traffic flow there. There's been a lot of things dropped into the toilets that shouldn't be.
But the sheer volume of the soccer games, the league that is on Sunday, is more volume than the system can really handle. And so this group will need to kind of consider that for next season. Do you want to invest in upgrading that system or force that league to rent porta potties? Because that's really and this has been a known problem. Those bathrooms have been both the city's bathrooms that are there by the soccer fields, as well as the bathrooms that are part of the Stinger's concession stand. They're all on the same system.
Okay.
And the problem is that it's a long ways from the park all the way to Ratzloff where it goes.
Some 900 feet.
And it's we almost need a pumping station or a lift station or something to get it that
Sure,
far.
was that run 30, 40 grand?
I have no idea. But it's something that, utilities will need to take a look at and make a recommendation of how to resolve the issue. So.
Do we know if the soccer games are going to keep going for next year? I know.
I think they're planning to. They're, they started their playoffs this yesterday. So the season's almost over, but I think, I think they plan to do it again next year. And, it's an issue that we have ignored for a long time, and I think it's at a point where we need to address it.
Well, before the soccer league, if I'm not mistaken, those bathrooms are hardly ever used.
Well, that's true because for a number of reasons. Number one, policy has been to close those restrooms to try and prevent vandalism and give keys to the various sporting organizations to utilize them. And part of that is because they won't handle a lot of foreign material being put into them, and so trying to have those kind of controls on it. I think if we upgraded the system, we could actually have the bathrooms open more often and available to people who just want to go use the park and aren't part of a sporting organization, which, would make sense. If you want to go out there and just walk your dog, it'd be nice to be able to utilize the bathrooms. but they need upgrading. Even milk days, and when we have major events, we always close them and make those events hire porta potties because we know the system won't handle those size of crowds.
When do we lock those up for the season, Ryan? October?
It varies from year to year. Sustained temperatures at night below freezing is obviously a concern of ours, so we look at the projected forecast going out a couple of weeks, and then we make accommodations in order to get those winterized and locked up. But historically, it is around that last couple weeks of October.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but are the soccer bathrooms left open during the day,
Yes.
all day?
Yep.
Those ones are not. Those are, but it's the Stingers ones that are locked,
Correct.
and we give keys to the organizations. But
Correct.
both restrooms have the same problem.
Right.
It's just a shorter distance from ours than it is from the one that's in the junior tackle concession stand.
Ryan, do you have anything else?
No, nothing
Okay.
on that side.
Any questions for Ryan? Rebuild Illinois grant?
So we had some adjustments that needed to be made after the grant official reviewed our first round of the application. We made those corrections, but we're still waiting on final approval. We did receive an email today that it is still in review.
Oh, well, at least we got feedback.
So
Any questions, any idea on dates on them?
at this moment, no.
On the subject of grants, did we find out anything on the stage?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try to get an answer for tomorrow.
Just for your edification, we submitted a grant last year, or applied for a grant to try and get a mobile stage for the city to replace the one that is used at Milk Days and would be more modern and
Right.
safer. But we've not heard any feedback on that, which leads me to believe that we were not awarded it, but I'd like some feedback officially one way or the other.
All right. IGA with CUST 50. I don't want to spend a long time on this. There's
Just a little status update as of earlier today. I reached out to the school district to ask about this and then potentially supporting a grant about doing safe walkways to school. Got an email response back earlier today saying that they'll try to kick back some dates
for meetings or?
for meetings.
Okay. But you can see page 2 right now, the district is not interested in moving forward with an IGA. So, I mean, there's got to be more discussion at this point, but
What are they referring to, restoring trust and positive relationships? Is there something?
I mean, we could spend a half an hour on that.
Right. And the big part here is that the part of that discussions, as soon as they happen, is doing that IGA, or at least coming to some sort of discussion. I specifically in my email requested that their board members, or at least a contingent of their board members, be present at that meeting. So we can try to muscle through this
Yeah, so there's,
in a good way, not
yeah, no, right. I mean,
Well, does that mean, does it go back to the discussion that, we thought they were somewhat taking advantage of us?
I don't know what the comment really entails, but, the city and the school district had a number of issues that we've been working through. One of them was the SRO, School Resource Officer contract. That contract has been completed and signed and approved by both parties and for the next 3 years, so that's been completed. There was also their project that they were trying to do for turf fields for the football field and the soccer field. And one of the things that they have requested is another meeting because they want to proceed with that project in order to make sure that they're fully understanding of what requirements are needed in order to be compliant with stormwater regulations and be able to get the stormwater permit to move forward. So that was their ask from us. And of course, that was a project they were trying to complete this past summer. And there were some reasons they were trying to push it through. It really was all about timing because next year they're looking to expand the Jefferson School to be able to accommodate special education, and in so doing, they won't have the additional room that they would have needed to do the football field. So you've got compromising projects that are going to utilize a lot of the same area. And so they were trying to get that done this year because next year they're going to run into that construction. So now I think their plan is to move forward with the turf projects, but one at a time, starting with the soccer field and then addressing the football field at a to be determined date. We don't know all those details yet, but that's a kind of expectation. So, and then thirdly, there is the issue of fees. That is the third issue. That issue is, hey, the school board was looking at instituting user fees to utilize their facilities, which would impact city programming and has already impacted some city programming in the point that we weren't able to conduct some city programming this summer while they were determining what,
Part I was referring to.
yeah, while they were determining what they need to do. And so, moving forward, I think they don't want to enter in an agreement about fee structures, is my initial interpretation of the email. However, there are things that make sense for us to collaborate on, even if they don't want to participate in that discussion. So that's where the city administrator reached out. You know, there are some other things that we need to discuss, like safe route to schools and things like this, where we need their collaboration in order to qualify for grants. Does that answer your question? I'm afraid it's the best I can do at this juncture, but, you know, I think we're going to try our best to be as collaborative with the school district possible. I think it's important. We're two major institutions in our community, and we kind of need to work together.
No, I fully agree. I just didn't know there was, I mean, it's, from this letter, it sounds like there's some more than surface animosity that needs to be taken care of.
I think there is some of that going on, and so I think meeting is the best way to get to the bottom of those issues and work through them.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, dog park update, Ryan, yours.
So the next page, that's kind of the start of the dog park discussion. So obviously Milky Way Park, we're scheduled to do some upgrades in the dog park this year. Water fountain, park bench, trash can, doggy bag dispenser, and sign. Those have been purchased, and a good chunk of those things have already come in. One of the other things that we budgeted for this year was adding a shade structure for patrons to utilize. So when I was out there in July talking with Rob about the water line for the fountain, I was looking at the Milky Way West shelter. And it got me thinking, would it be more cost effective to just fence off that area and include that into the dog park? So you can see kind of some pictures in this packet as well. So the shelter that we kind of, for something that's gonna last, you're looking at between 6,000 and 7,000 without installation, site prep, or any of the flat work. So to lay cement for the new shelter, if we did a full cement slab, it's gonna be in that $3,000 to $4,000 dollar range. And then we would have to add at some point additional ADA sidewalks to get to that shelter in the future. So thinking that the shelter is underutilized, it already has a walking path to it that's ADA compliant. It already has picnic tables. I reached out to the company that did the fence, and we received a quote for $6,000 to encompass that area. So the shelter does need some work, but that's been known before this thought even came to light. So I figured it would be roughly between $2,000 to $4,000, probably closer on that $4,000 that we would need to invest in that shelter. Whether it's, needs to be clean, new roof, a couple slight repairs, and then obviously stained or painted. So I kind of broke it down. There's a sheet. So new shelter versus the existing shelter. So a new shelter is gonna cost about $7,000, cement, let's say $4,000. Labor for the installation in-house, I'm figuring 2 guys for a day to install it. And then eventually you're gonna have a sidewalk cost to get to there. It's roughly, depending on where you put the sidewalks, 130 to 170 feet. Figure 3 foot wide at 4 inches deep. And then we're still gonna have the repair cost for that shelter anyway. So expected cost for a full ADA compliant and completion for a new shelter, I mean, this is a full step. You're looking at just a little over $21,000. To fence off the existing shelter with the repairs, you're in at about 10. Just, I know it was in the email, but just so that way everybody understands, since 2019, that shelter, the E-shelter, has been reserved 22 times, totaling in just a little over $1,300 in revenue. And of those 22 reservations, 15 have been the American Bicycle Racing Group, and they normally reserve that throughout the summer in the morning. They would have no issues either utilizing underneath the junior tackle pavilion or that far east side pavilion. Because they're pretty much,
The other pavilion in the park.
yeah. You know, they're normally just there bright and early, they do their registration and then they're gone. So, that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Questions?
With that first aerial, so this is an old aerial picture. This is actually when the first temporary fencing was up. I don't have an aerial of the current existing one, but it's pretty close. So we would actually have a secondary gate, a double entry gate right there off of the sidewalk. Now looking long-term, big picture, eventually at some point, we now have 2 entrances to where if we ever want to have a run going from where that blue line intersects with the existing fence all the way across to the Lawrence Road side, you would have really subdivided into either a small dog section, however you want to do it. And that way you have an existing secondary entrance as well. And you wouldn't need to take a sidewalk to that entrance because you're compliant with ADA to the main area.
What's, has any thought been given to not take that fence out and just put a gate in here?
So we thought about that, but all this fencing that John's referring to, this first page, the actual quote where the dotted line is. So all of that fencing is actually being reused.
I get it, I'm just saying that it'd be nice, I would think, to have this area be kind of, bring my dog in there and chill out and whatever, and if you leave it wide open, it isn't.
So we thought about that. The concern that I would have is it's 2 separate areas then the owner's not with their dog watching it if they let him go into the big area. So by have it being completely open.
Yeah, the idea of this was to use this shelter instead of putting a shelter in the dog park.
I understand that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, I don't know. I just thought the shelter would be a separate area included in the dog park. That's all.
One consideration, though, if you ever do separate off the one area for a smaller dog run, you're really gonna have to put a shelter in there too. Eventually, I mean, if you ever do that, if you think
Yeah,
about it.
at some point, I mean,
A
that's,
small shelter, it doesn't have to be anything,
yeah, that's,
that's way, way, way down the road.
yeah, this one, obviously, as you all know, our budget gets tighter and tighter every year. To where trying to think outside the box and figure out ways that we can add more while spending less. That was,
Now, this plan will leave the current entry gate into the dog park alone.
correct,
So there will be actually 2 entry gates besides your big double gate.
correct.
Okay.
And we spaced it out enough to where everything within the fenced off area is still able to be mowed with our mowers.
And if I recall, there's a in-ground grill right near that. Is that inside or outside of the proposed fencing?
That would be inside until the fencing is up, and then it would be no longer there.
It would be removed?
Yes.
Okay.
You probably don't want grilling in there, you know, prepping food and stuff like that.
Correct.
Are those grills ever used?
Yeah.
Occasionally, not very often though.
There's the one by this one, there's one by the east shelter as well, isn't there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, just curious.
It's your pleasure, folks.
I move we proceed with this modification of the dog park to use the existing shelter.
Scott, thank you. Is there a second? I'll second it. I think it's a good idea. I will ask though, Ryan, so what did we have budgeted for the shelter? About 10,000?
So we didn't have a specific number set on just the shelter itself.
We had 20 grand total.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
What do we have left?
I would have to go back and look with this modification, but we're gonna be, if I remember right, with everything that'll be purchased, we should be in the 12 to 13 completely finished.
Would this get accomplished in this fiscal year,
Absolutely,
before winter? essentially?
absolutely.
Will the repairs get done, or is that like next year?
The
probably?
repairs are probably gonna have to be a budgeted line item for next year.
Okay,
And I think that's the smartest way to go, because we might be able to do some of that in-house, but that's gonna take some time to figure out actually go through and evaluate everything to figure out what all needs to be done.
and I think when we were up there, there was 6 picnic tables underneath, and really we could reallocate those
Yeah,
elsewhere. Yeah.
Absolutely, I think we would leave 3.
One of them was handicap.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Well, and what's nice is, with 3 picnic tables up there, so we're gaining 3 more somewhere else in the park system, and that's, $3,000 worth of seating, really, that's gonna stay there. So,
As far as the timing, knowing Fence Factory family as I do, you give them the go-ahead, they'll be there within a week.
yeah, there's no doubt that they won't have that. They can have it done by the end of the month, I'm sure of it, but it's gonna take we wanna make sure that we make it easy for all the other moving parts that are going into it. I don't wanna add the fence and then, have to move stuff in order to, we'll take the grill out first and,
Get the grill out, get the picnic
Yeah.
tables out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there might be a week or 2 that the dog park's closed down, just so we can get everything taken care of, but we'll make those notifications to the public as they come through, so.
There's also, 4 garbage cans? We're gonna need 4 garbage cans, and that's kinda, I wouldn't think so. Are they in good shape? Are they bad, or?
Those ones are in pretty good shape. They're better than most.
I would say 2. What, right? Maybe 2 at the most?
Yeah.
2, no more than 3. I mean, you can reallocate it 1.
I'd
I
move 2
think
out.
I think you're fine with 2 in there.
In each corner or something
And-
like that.
I would certainly suggest having one near each of the entryways, because that's where people are gonna use it on their way out. They hopefully.
Well, we purchased one, right? And that's gonna be, where is that gonna be put?
Well, we purchased, you're talking just for the dog park?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one will probably go over by the original entrance.
Yeah, so then.
Yeah.
Just leave the other 2 up in the shelter and.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's however you want to do it, Ryan. All right, so, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Rosa, John? Opposed?
Nay.
Okay,
Best way to go for right now is this.
Okay.
item.
motion approved. Lou, number 8.
Yeah,
Lou,
so,
hold on just a second. I've run the washroom, but you go ahead.
okay.
You're good, I'm sorry.
So as we're going through, and updating things, one of the things that came up was that, I know this committee recommended, reinserting the, facility usage, fees. The thing that we did not do at the time was actually update the pricing as well. Because right now, I think we charge $5 an hour for rental. We're asking to move that up to 15. And removing the resident, non-resident, or sorry, the lighted versus the, correct me, what one we,
All of that's staying the same, it's just an increase in fees.
yeah, from $10 across the board, essentially. Just going from 5 to 15, 10 to 20 when it's lighted versus non-lighted.
Is on,
Got it here.
it's this appendix A.
Yeah, as well as we were going through, we realized that there was a lot of verbiage that was not included in the facility use, or the field usage agreement, which is all listed in red as you go through. These are all additions, so you can see we went from essentially 1 page to 3 pages, not including the application itself, or the final signatures.
Yeah, you're looking for this page.
Yeah, that's for the
Yeah.
fees, and then,
Now, these proposed rates are what will be charged by
if
these organizations down here?
it will be charged to organizations that are using, say, the fields. But remember, everybody can still apply for a waiver or
Right,
reduction,
right.
depending on, the organization.
And this is per usage,
Uh,
Per hour.
per hour,
per hour per usage though?
per usage, yes.
And when you say resident, non-residents, whoever's in charge of the outing or whatever?
I think it's
or the-
supposed to be the majority of that organization, but we never really,
It's a bit of on an honor system.
yeah.
But our usage agreement, our verbiage, our fees were either non-existent or stagnant for several years, so this just brings it up to what I would consider a 2023 code.
So they would have to sign this agreement,
Correct.
whoever were.
Correct.
And before, we had an agreement before this?
It was, how was it done before?
Had a facility agreement.
But that was essentially the first page.
So, no, this is a newer one.
Sorry.
This
All
is the new one that was done back in, this is like round 2. So we originally went through back in like May, I believe, May, April, somewhere in there. When we were having talks with the school district charging us, we didn't have anything put in place because I want to say it was 2020, somewhere in there, we waived all fees for not-for-profit organizations within Harvard. So looking at it after, more information came out, we thought we were undervaluing ourselves. So this is basically just version 2 of the one that was done earlier this year to make us more competitive with what other, rates are within town and surrounding areas as well.
One thing, item 19 on the agreement says alcohol in glass containers, but there's no mention of glass.
Good catch. Yeah.
I think the issue is glass containers should be prohibited.
I would tend to agree with that, but it doesn't say anything.
It mentions the topic, but doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
specifically prohibit it.
Glass prohibited.
On the City of Harvard Field Usage Agreement, that first page, organizations included in this agreement are, I noticed we've got priority access listed for groups, and I'm wondering, what does that mean? They have first,
First right of refusal for those designated areas. Those are the original founding groups to those specific areas.
right,
So they would have first right of refusal as well as priority scheduling over the other organizations.
in reality though, for like Lions Park, we know that the high school team plays there, and they've played there for, longer than I've lived here. And then wouldn't that be a priority?
We can make it one, for
Alright.
sure. You could run into conflicting schedules.
Sure. Well, I don't think they ever do with hers, because it's in the spring, right?
I did have a conversation with the HERS president. They have had conflicts in the past. They are few and far between, but they do happen. Not so much with normal practices and games. It's more if the school district reschedules a game
Yeah.
or reschedules a practice, whether due to inclement weather, whatever it might be, and nobody's notified of that.
Yeah.
And so then they have a practice where HERS should be practicing.
What's your recommended solution for those situations?
So how we're trying to figure it out right now is the school district has already put in their request for spring softball. I have reached out to the HERS organization to have her send me some sort of tentative schedule as to when they will be out there to where we can make sure that there's no conflicting dates. What we're putting in, or what I'm thinking about putting in, is there's gonna be no rescheduled dates without prior approval to make sure there's no conflicting.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, to where,
You
if
get
you get a
the-
rainout game in March and they reschedule it for mid-May, well, you're gonna need prior approval for that before I say yes or no, just to make sure it doesn't conflict with anything.
I think that's prudent. That way, if it's on the city schedule, then you have that field assigned, and then with the HERS needs, you can say, well, I have these dates available, but that one's already taken.
Yep.
And vice versa.
Yep, that was my thought process through that.
I think that would be a equitable solution.
And the other reason that the HERS is priority access is because it's their concession stand. It's
Yeah,
it's
no, I
all
get
of
it.
their infrastructure.
I
there.
get it, yep, I get it. Okay,
But if you want to add them to it, I can.
no,
do
you
that.
don't have to, I mean, I just noted that.
One of the things I'd like to mention, and I don't mean to derail the topic here, but keep in mind, again, you have the waiver to waive fees, but even with raising the rates, I suggest that you at least lower the fees if you're going to do that, because keep in mind that the parks, or the rec department runs on a special tax, and whenever it's short, that comes out of the general fund. And right now, it's running about $49,000 short, which means other projects throughout the city get sidelined in order. And part of this too, as far as raising the fees or making it more competitive, is to help reduce that need on the general fund. So ultimately, the goal is to try to make the parks completely self-sustaining. I'm doing this because of the lights. Sorry.
What's the time period of that $49,000?
That's per year.
We're in a new, well, hold on, we're in a new year, right, and that started in May? So we're $49,000 short this year?
No, typically, let me clarify.
So over the
Typically,
average over the last, how many years?
I know the.
Has that been since, well, I guess I'm asking is, and Lou, and I apologize, but since that referendum was passed 5 or 6 years ago, I don't believe Dave has ever said that we've run $40,000 to $50,000 in the red.
If, I don't have those numbers, but we
Yeah.
can get them for you.
Yeah,
I can
that's
say,
what I'd like
yeah,
to see.
I would say, every year we have contributed from the general fund to the parks fund.
Right.
With the exception of 2020, I think, when we were shut down for COVID and the
Right.
pool wasn't open.
Sure.
So that, that's where our biggest deficits come from, is pool operations. And I think 2021 was very close. But I think every other year, there has been some amount of money that has been allocated from the general fund to the parks fund.
Right.
We can get that information from
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know since, like a comparison of before and after.
since the referendum.
Right. I mean,
Yep.
before, it was probably 50 to 60,000 every year.
Indeed,
After,
or
it's
more,
probably
or
20
more.
to 30.
And,
When I took
to
over,
the tune that the parks fund is actually in arrears to the general fund by over $1 million.
Right.
Which is an accounting issue that we've discussed to the overall city council about, which could be corrected, but I'm making a recommendation that we wait another fiscal year to do that. That's another discussion to have with city council, but in the end, if you were to go back through, even obviously prior to the referendum, it was way lopsided. Since the referendum, I believe there's been at least 1 year where there wasn't any transferred over, but I think it's 1 and maybe 2. I think 2021, if there was some, it was very little. But I can't remember off the top of my head.
Understood. I'm just, look, the bottom line is if we're gonna run a pool, we're gonna run short. That is
Yeah,
the reality
pool-
of
yes,
the situation.
The pool expenses outweigh the revenue it generates. That's a known fact, and we've tried lots of things to right that ship. We've gotten it closer by increasing fees and changing fee structures, but it's still the cost to operate the pool, unless we are able to get a competitive swim team maybe that was utilizing the pool. I think we will always be upside down on that
Now,
proposition.
keep in mind too that, we've been working, we've been trying to come up with ideas for what's proverbially low-hanging fruit, low expense, better revenue to help on the Parks and Rec make sure that they don't go into the red on our books. We've got the eggnog jog that's coming up, which should help out. And other things, like one of the things that we're talking about is in the spring doing a soccer tournament. That would help out as far as generating revenue. And we'll see how it goes the first 1 or 2, and we can, we'll already have the budget done before next year, before we find out as far as doing a soccer tournament, but at least by the 25-26 budget year, we can see what these kind of revenues will generate. And that'll help as far as also planning projects to make sure that the parks stay up to speed, because bottom line, when people are paying taxes, they want to see what they're getting. And if it means not necessarily going into the red, but at least reallocating what would have been in the red, going towards refurbishing the parks, I think people would be generally happy. Keep in mind, these are the same folks that actually passed that special tax. So we're just trying to realign some of the money so that people see what they're getting, or get what they're paying for.
Ryan, I'd recommend that you add a bullet point for the rescheduling of postponed or canceled games, so that it's actually in the contract.
All right, do you need us to approve this, Ryan?
yeah, if that's what the board would like to do, I can, it can be approved or denied, either way.
If you approve,
Pending corrections.
Thank you. You beat me to the punch.
Move to approve the draft here with the corrections that have been discussed, including the glass container.
I'll second that.
Second, Rosa? Or, thank you, Lori.
Lori did.
Thank you, Lori.
So how much are we off on the pool every year? I wasn't.
Well, and I
know that.
didn't mean to derail. What I'll do is, we'll pull together the numbers and pass it around.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to look at that.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna have budget talks coming up here soon anyway, November, beginning of December, or actually probably November. We have to finish really, because he's got to submit by beginning of December, I think, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Remember, a pool as a whole, you throw money in.
It is absolutely
It is.
without question.
And-
We had it, we had a meeting, and.
Yeah, prior to your
Yeah.
being on the board.
Yeah, we had a
so-
meeting at the school district where we said,
I
you
was
know,
there.
Scott was there,
Yeah.
we have to buy a new boiler, we have to buy a new pump, it's gonna cost this amount of money. Would you rather us do that, or you want us to close the pool, and we'll allocate those funds elsewhere in this parks? And the people that came to that meeting wanted to keep the pool.
Yep.
The people that, you know, there wasn't enough support to, so that's how we voted to, okay, we're gonna keep the pool. Knowing that our guards are gonna cost $15 an hour now, you know, and you have to have 8 of them on duty, so the pool becomes more and more expensive every year. I mean, it is what, and the pool's 20 years old, and we have to replace pumps and boilers and whatnot, you know, all the time. And we're getting it for 75 days a year.
Yeah.
So, but that's
It's what people demanded.
Right.
that's what they demanded.
In 8 years of doing this, I've only seen one pool come close to even breaking even, and that was in Nebraska. The COVID restrictions were a year longer than up here, and so everybody flooded into the pool last summer. And we also had a film crew coming through, and they were paying as well. So that, and I think we got within $1,000, but that was extraordinary circumstances. So it is tough to get a pool to be balanced. If it was highly profitable, somebody else would probably be doing it.
Very true. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Vandalism report, Ryan.
So, actually, can we go back real quick? I have something that I need to ask. So, is this, now that it's approved, is this moving forward? Or for the organizations that have already submitted their stuff that haven't been approved yet?
I would say those that have submitted their requests would be, at least for this first round, grandfathered in under the old rates.
So,
Because they've submitted their request based on the information they had at the time.
And well, and I would add just if they have submitted but their programs aren't for a while yet, then they can be fully informed before their activities take over or begin. Because
so we have 2 that have submitted schedule so far.
For what time period?
Harvard Junior Tackle has submitted their schedule for this current season as well as their fee waiver request, which is on.
And their season has already started.
Correct. And then we have the request from the school district, which is there's one request in October, and it's 1 day for cross-country, and then late February through mid-May, end of May for the school district.
My recommendation to the committee is for certain for the program that's already underway, the tackle, I mean, they've already started their season.
Mhm.
It would be completely unfair and unjust to slam them with fees that parents were not expecting to have to carry in a program already running.
Agreed.
I agree.
That was all part of my motion.
I agree too, but I feel that the other ones should be charged the higher rate. I mean, inflation is crazy right now.
and there's nothing stopping them from applying for either a waiver. And when it comes to the school, there's still the discussions about the IGA that could null and void or change the situation.
Well, doesn't this kind of go back to the restored trust and positive blah, 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 that, you know, maybe we should think about that? And I mean, they've submitted their application with the fees that were in place.
Well, they submitted for a waiver, but they asked for a waiver, right? For both? They have not asked for a waiver yet?
At least not yet.
I think it's a fair comment, John.
I would think they've submitted with the fees in place.
Yeah,
We leave the.
I would agree with that.
If those two things, the cross-country thing and the other thing in the spring, and, go
Agreed.
from there.
I would agree, yeah.
I recommend you make a motion to make that official.
I make a motion to, leave the fees in place for the entities that have already submitted applications. Junior tackle football, the cross-country one-dayer in the fall, and the spring, what are they doing in the spring? Whatever.
Softball.
Softball in the spring,
Yeah.
and then anybody else going forward, we give them.
Well, and
higher
that,
fee
that would be
structure.
for this year, and I'm sorry, John, go ahead. You make that motion, can we just get a second?
Second.
And my discussion would be, that would be for this year. So like next year when it comes around, here's the new fees now. If you want a waiver, here's the waiver form, but these are the new fees. They were approved, last fall. You had already submitted, so we didn't change for you, and we didn't change for you. So, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Me.
Okay, all right. Seeing none, that was approved. Ryan, go ahead.
Nothing for vandalism on the police report side
my
of
God.
things, but we still have an ongoing issue with Milky Way Park and garbage in the bathrooms. Reaching out to the organizations and keeping them in the loop, and that's all. And can't say one way or another who it is, what it is. We check them on Friday and we check them on Monday.
So Friday they're fine, and then Monday they're not.
But
And it's
there's a
with
lot of
what?
activity that
Would the
happens.
committee like to have staff send in photos so they can understand the scope of the problem?
Yeah, I think we should see that.
Sure.
All
Are
right.
is
Don't
it the
eat
garbage
fryer.
bins are overflowing and they're just, or is it they're like throwing stuff everywhere?
A little bit of everything.
Okay.
I think would help the committee understand the scope by sending them photos.
You got it. Send those out first thing in the morning.
Any questions for Ryan? Number 10, mayor's report.
Thank you very much. We've really discussed a number of the things that are going on, but I will reiterate the turf project and trying to help the school district get through that project. And then I think that also will help create these lines of trust that was mentioned in the previous email. I definitely think, the committee, as I've already stated, needs to analyze the restroom situation at Milky Way Park when we get into budgeting for next year and make decisions of what you might want to do to address that issue. It's been a long-standing issue, and I think it's time we at least address it and make some kind of action plan for the future, whether it's next year, 2 years from now, or whatever, but leave that up to the committee to consider. The city is going through a renewal of our strategic vision that is on the city's website, and that process will be starting actually next month with some interviews with city staffing, and then the city council will be meeting and doing a workshop in October to address this. And so now might be a good time in the September meeting, if you have some visions for the parks that you want to introduce and have city council consider in this visioning workshop, that would be a worthy thing to consider. So my recommendation to the committee is take a look at the current parks master plan of the parks, and see if there are ideas that you might have either in conjunction or addition to that plan, and bring that back to this committee next month and make it known so we could bring that information to the city council for consideration in the visioning workshop.
Any questions for the mayor?
So
When is that meeting, Mayor?
this one.
Which meeting?
The
Division.
strategic-
October,
It's the last weekend in October.
yeah, last weekend in October.
Mayor,
I wanna say it's like the
27th, I think it is.
27th?
I think it's the
27th or 28th, something like
Yeah.
you mentioned the issue with the turf up at the high school and the groundwater ordinance, correct?
Stormwater, yeah.
Stormwater. If I'm not mistaken, there was some lack of clarity, although it's a city ordinance, it's the city's
Yes, sir.
adoption of the county ordinance.
Yes, it's a county ordinance, And so, in cities that have not adopted that ordinance, people or businesses that want to do whatever kind of construction upgrade that's going to affect impervious surface would have to go to the county to get that permit. Since the city has adopted that ordinance as a city's ordinance, the city is now a certified stormwater city because we've adopted the ordinance, and now entities within the city who are looking to do construction can apply for that permit directly with the city, and it goes through city engineers. There's a benefit to that because the city engineers have a 10-day business day turnaround for such kind of permit applications. If you went directly to the county, it's more like 6 to 8 weeks. And so if you have a significant timeline that you're trying to achieve, it's much faster to go through the city, and there's less bureaucracy, I guess. Nonetheless, the ordinance is still there, and you still need to meet the letter of those ordinances in terms of water retention. And one of the key things about this ordinance, if you were to go read it, is that it catches people because there is to give you a quick understanding, let's say you wanted to do a project that reduced or increased impervious surface on your site, but it didn't meet this threshold, and I think that threshold is 10,000 square feet, if I remember correctly. Or it's 5,000, okay. So when you do your initial build, like if you build a building and, part of that is part of your permitting process. Now you want to add more stuff and create more impervious surface, and that could be something as simple as laying down gravel, because gravel is considered impervious surface. So if that threshold, let's say you want to do a project and I want to create a gravel parking lot over here, and that puts me at 4,500 square feet, you're okay. You don't have to do anything because it's under 5,000. Let's say 3 years from then, you want to do a project that is another 2,000 square feet. That's going to put you over that 5,000 square feet from the original when you include the other project that you did. So what happens is, if you want, I only want to do 2,000 more square feet. Yeah, but now you have to accommodate for water retention, not just for the 2,000 you just want to do, but the 4,500 you did 3 years ago, because it takes you over that threshold. And that is a situation that not only the school district, but actually Dunham Township finds itself in, and a few other places where they want to add things, and all of a sudden, well, what do you mean we have to account for all that we did 10 years ago? Yes, I'm afraid that's how the ordinance is written. And it's written that way to prevent you from doing phases of projects to get around that rule. And so it brings back into the picture, oh, you did all this work back 6 years ago, that now with this new work, it's going to take you over. So not only do you have to account for water retention for the new work, but you also have to include the old work. And that's the situation, like I said, that we've not run into in a number of places, and it was one of the things that contributed to this issue for the turf.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So
Ryan.
just to recap.
Yeah.
It's good. City do it 10 days. County does it 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
But the ordinance itself is the same either way.
Yeah.
It's a
There were
county ordinance that the city has adopted.
Right.
Much like our electrical code, right, for when you build something and you need to get your electrical permits. We've adopted an electrical code, and so but we didn't write that code, we adopted it. Just like we want to update those codes to more updated codes that are out there, because our code is a bit old. I think we're 2012.
Yep. We're 11 years
And
behind.
there's newer codes that are out there that we're looking for the council at some point here in the future to adopt and bring us up to the current codes.
Ryan, your report.
I pretty much touched on everything so far in stuff that we've talked about tonight. Obviously, Facebook is doing good. We did have a little bit of an issue. I had some posts scheduled for when I was on vacation the week before the pool closed. somehow they all ended up in a draft format and nothing got posted, and I didn't realize it until, Tuesday morning, so.
Too busy in the UP, man. Come on
Yeah.
now.
Man makes plans, God laughs.
Yeah, that's right.
So I put out a nice post, I thought, apologizing for it.
Yeah, it was very nice, yep.
You know, obviously mistakes happen, and anytime you're dealing with technology, you always can run into those potential things. But we're still, I mean, people are still, you know, visiting our page. I think it's all residual stuff from the pool cleaning time lapses, but nonetheless, it's still people that are looking at Harvard Parks and Rec, which is awesome. Pool pass numbers, our target was right around 360. We did fall a little short of that. My software up at the pool, it's not wanting to give me an extremely accurate report. It's pulling some old data from expired pool pass numbers, and I'm trying to figure out why that's the case. So, hoping to get that resolved. But all in all, I mean, the season did turn around. We obviously had swim lessons, which did really, really well, and water aerobics stayed strong again for its 4th or 5th year. We did have the adult lap swim scheduled on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Unfortunately, throughout all of that, we didn't have anybody.
Wow.
So,
And that's one of those things that I keep seeing on Facebook. Oh, we need to have some adult-only lap swims, and nobody shows. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's possible that the times that were allotted didn't coincide with
Yeah.
when people could go.
yeah, it was
I mean,
Tuesday and Friday from 11 to noon, and then Saturdays from, I believe, 11 to noon as well.
I wouldn't be surprised if people were looking for lap swims on their schedule, not our schedule.
Of course.
Right?
Why
Like
can't we
everything
have it at
else.
7 in the morning? Because
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
so
see a lot.
oftentimes people want to swim first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
right?
And, you know, we hear a lot of things. It's like, okay, we want swim lessons in the evening. We want, you know, all of this stuff in the evening. Well, that's our operating time. That's when, you know,
Yeah.
we're operating. So where we can offer those things, but obviously you're going to pay a lot more because we're paying more staff, more time, more everything. And then, you know, especially on the weekends, you run into pool parties and stuff that are after hours. And, you know, in the morning, we're running, you know, water aerobics and swim lessons. And we have to take time to also consider that the pool doesn't clean itself. The pool doesn't maintain itself. You know, that we have to allot time for that, so. But other than that, I think we've hit everything that I wanted to know.
Ryan, when does the basketball program start typically every year?
So the basketball program historically starts the first week in November, with registration ending around that time. We let it fluctuate a little bit depending on our numbers, and, you know, just like anything else, oh, I didn't know about it, and so then they're registering 2 days, a week afterwards. So we always trying to accommodate that as long as we have the space available for it. And then our season will run practice November, December, and then we start games that first week in January, and we'll run through mid-March. So,
All right, any questions for Ryan?
Did you discuss the increased cost for the basketball program?
I did not.
That's on this page right here.
I think we should at least broach the subject and
Alright.
help the committee understand what this page means.
Alrighty, so it is the page, I believe, right before my report in your packet. So, with you saw the school district minutes and their fee structure in there. That's just the minutes showing that this new fee structure was approved, 7-0 per their minutes. So, originally in the years past, we were no charge. All not-for-profit organizations were no charge within the school district. Their fee structure this year is dictated differently with that. So our charge is now, for practice, $10 an hour. And then on Saturdays for games, it would be $30 an hour. On Sundays, it would be $40 an hour. So for us to run 4 hours a week, which is 4 teams, 2 hours per practice, utilizing 4 gyms for 18 weeks, we're looking at just about almost $2,900 just for practice costs. For games costs, this was based off of last year's seasons. So we had numerous games obviously scheduled throughout the year last year here in Harvard. If that were to stay the same, we would be at about $2,500 is what we would have to pay the school district. Bringing it to just about $5,400 is what we're going to have to pay the school district this year. So looking at the bottom section, well, going back through it. So obviously our official cost, that's a fixed cost. You know, Harvard pays for one official and then the other team pays for one. So we always have two officials, so every team pays for one official per game. Uniform cost, obviously we can always fluctuate that a little bit up and down. But that's kind of a fixed cost as well. And then equipment costs, whether it's, you know, any sort of practice materials, pennies, basketballs, scorebooks, stuff like that. We always like to have a little bit in there. Bringing our total cost for our basketball season this year just about $12,520. Our break-even number per kid, if we have 12 players per each grade level, is $260.83 versus $125 last year.
Getting back to the school district fees, we allow for the school district to request a waiver of fees for the use of the parks, right?
We do, yes.
I've asked
But-
Lou and Ryan to submit a letter to the school district asking them to consider waiving the fees for this program that we've done forever.
Okay, because
but
they
that's-
don't have any procedure for requesting a waiver.
No,
That is
But-
correct.
but there is a,
Okay.
Scott, there is a cost for them compared to us because they have to have a janitor there.
I understand.
So, yeah, I mean,
There's real costs that the school district
I understand.
has, lighting, air conditioning, whatever, electricity, as well as they have to have a custodian there and to open and close and clean and what have you. So there is real costs that the school district has absorbed on all these past programs. And so sympathetic to that. It's like asking us to absorb. So those real costs, that's what the school board went through and said, we've got all these programs that are being utilized on our facilities, and it's additional cost to the school district that they're not being recouping. So I think that's why they institute those fees, much like we've instituted fees for our stuff. It's just that it is going to create a hardship for the participants of this program, going from $125 to participate to $260, unless this committee wants to subsidize that. And I'm not sure if we have the budget to do so, because you haven't budgeted to subsidize it, but it's an issue. And other than maybe trying to get sponsorship, the only alternative is to ask for a waiver. But if the school district isn't willing to waiver, our travel basketball program is likely to be difficult to get going this year, based on a player cost of $260 to participate.
We should
Chico's
bring it
bails bonds, right? Wasn't that Bad News Bears on there, sure? Go ahead, Rosa, I'm sorry.
out to the school district, and custodians are there. They work second shift. It's not like, and I know
Well,
they
the
have to clean.
issue is especially on weekends, because they're not there. And Sundays are really a big issue, because they have to schedule them to come in. So that's the problem. The alternative, as Ryan had suggested here, is if they went with no home games, then we would eliminate that cost, but our kids would go to an away game for every game.
Parents don't like that. We've had to do it a couple of years.
So these new rates are for this year? This
So
November?
if you look at the bottom, option one is increasing it to 140 for a resident, 160 for a non-resident. That's a 12% increase. Option one revenue, you're looking at, we're going to be, in the red, $5,700. Option 2, you're gonna be in the red $5,200 and charging option 3, which is charging the $270 and the $310, you're gonna be in the green $600.
So even by going with option 1 and the school insists on charging these fees, or let's say the school waives them, you're still going to be in the red by about $320, which again was not budgeted, but at least it gives a little bit of wiggle room to find it in the budget. But being in the hole $5,700, even at $140, and keep in mind that the previous fees were $125 for a resident and $140 for a non-resident, which when you look at it, and Ryan has it listed here under kids, using last year's numbers, we only had 4 kids that were outside, that were considered non-residents. So it's not like that's making that much of an impact on the revenue in order to offset these costs. And the other thing too is to keep in mind, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to try to run programs that not necessarily make money, but at least minimize the loss. And so without a waiver, it puts a huge strain on the system. And
Doesn't the Harvard High School have a basketball program?
They do, yes.
And I'm assuming some of these kids who are played in our program have filtered into their program and have made them somewhat better?
I think that's true. I don't know that definitively, but I would assume that
I would
players
think-
have played and
I would
have
think they would
gone
want
on
us
to play in
continue our
high school.
program.
I'm sorry?
I would think they would want us to continue our program, and by, wanting us to do that, they would waive fees.
Yeah, I think the question needs to be asked. The question needs to be asked. That, and then once the school district answers that question, yes or no, then we move forward. So, I mean,
I would propose to do it that way,
well, I agree with you.
we're drafting, and
Yeah.
we got the instruction to draft something, and it's going to be reviewed by the mayor and by Alderman, or sorry, in this case, Chairman Schulz, before it goes over. But the whole point is to emphasize that just that this is a program that helps the school that we're actually paying for, and so without it, I mean, with the huge, almost doubling our fees or our expenses on this, it makes it to the point where without charging, 270 and 310 for resident and non-resident, and again, that's based on last year's numbers. If we have no non-resident, the resident fee would actually go up a little bit more. It just puts such a strain that, and I know Ryan's feelings. He's put a lot of heart and soul into building up this program, but there's a real risk that we won't be able to either field enough or have enough people or kids play in order to field a team, or just make it so financially outside the realm that we cannot justify continuing. Now, the risk, and I've emphasized this on behalf of Ryan, and Ryan has said it more than once to me, is that if we kill the program, and there's a real risk that could happen, be it part in our control or out of our control, the real risk is that it may never come back to the form it's taken years to build up to.
What is the age range, Brian?
Grade through 8th grade. Last year, we had over 50 kids in the program.
Ryan, I'm looking at your spreadsheet here and flipping back to the District 50 fees. You figured in $10 an hour for the practice cost.
Correct.
Are those during school hours?
Those are after hours, but during the week when a janitor is already there.
There's typically a janitor there at the school till like 10 o'clock at night, on weekdays, not on weekends, yeah.
The issue comes up on weekends.
Yeah,
when there's nobody
Saturdays
there.
and Sunday. You guys don't do Sunday, do you? It's only Saturday?
I have in the past when the school district when the gyms are overutilized and the only
Oh,
way
yeah.
we can get games in is on Sundays.
But because of this cost structure now, I mean, we have to plan worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We've factored no Sunday games.
Right.
So it'll put a little more strain on the system itself. But you can't go from, was it $30 an hour janitor on Saturday to 40 when we can barely even cover 30 at the current rates. So we would just be compounding the problem. It's a awkward, sticky situation, which may answer a little bit of your questions from earlier, and I'd be happy to go into further detail after this. But
My only other thought is the $10 an hour for the gym is not for the custodian.
no,
You
that's
mentioned
just,
the added cost of the
that's
school they've
just
got
the
to
gym.
have. They already have a custodian there, so maybe they would be willing to waive the $10 fee.
All we can do is ask.
Okay. Thank you.
But I just want to emphasize again, especially for our few listeners, that Ryan has done a heck of a job building up this program years ago. They initially started with $175, and that was too much for our residents. Once it dropped down to 125, and a lot of the time and effort he's put in to the program, he's helped to build it up. So I just want to emphasize what we have done on our side, particularly Ryan, to make this program function.
And it should be stated the coaches are volunteers, so.
All the coaches are volunteers, and actually, we try to make it as easy for parents, whether it's with payment plans or however we need to do it. I've even sponsored kids myself, not trying to hooray, but there's kids that love this program and I love this program. And I mean, I've sponsored kids in the past because mom and dad couldn't afford it. But, they're good kids and I want them to play basketball. And we actually created a completely new league that follows the school, KRC feeder league. So basically, by the time they enter fifth grade, all the way through junior high up into high school, they're playing the same kids that they're going to see their senior year of high school. Beforehand, we were playing in the SWL League, which is the Southern Wisconsin League. We were playing Whitewater, Turner, Beloit, Delvin Darien, Bigfoot, all these teams that the kids were never going to see. So, and it's a lot, I'm telling you what, I like driving to Richmond a lot better than I like driving to Whitewater. I'm telling you that much.
No,
It's a great program, and, we obviously see the benefit of it, and we do the best that we possibly can every single year with it. So.
Maybe we
And-
should ask for sponsorships if needed. I mean, because I don't think that these rates are gonna fly.
Well, and that was discussed, but there's also a belief that the city's raising taxes in order to fund some of these programs. And then you have, outside of our realm, we have not-for-profits already out there. For the city to start asking for sponsorships, we'd be taking, $4,000 to $5,000 out of the market that could actually go to these nonprofits. So you're adding another another handout, another person with a hands out, asking for money when there's other groups that really depend on that sponsorship versus us.
But to your point, Rosa, that is a possibility to make this program go if we had sponsorship that were willing to sponsor the uniforms that could reduce a lot of the cost. It is not something we have tried in the past, and I'm not certain that we have the bandwidth to get that going this year. But it is something we could consider in the future if these fees persist, because I think it's the only way that the program would move forward.
Ryan, I'm gonna get together with you later. My grandkids are involved in a bunch of stuff out in Belvedere, and my daughter's always sending me ways that they're trying to raise money, and some of it I think might be able to be adapted, puts very little hit on individuals, but would help to cover that $140 or $160 fee. And I'll talk to Abby and get you some ideas.
And keep in mind, Ryan's a department of one. So the more time he has to spend to try to fundraise, the less time he has to actually spend on what that special tax was meant to do. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like the naysayer here, but I'm also trying to keep everyone focused on, or keep it in everyone's mind. It's taxpayer dollars that we're dealing with here. And as my earlier comment, and I again, didn't mean to be a sourpuss on it, but the more money that's bled out in this department, the more money has to come out from other areas. And if everything was held neutral and we still had to cover the $5,400 out of the parks, that would be $5,400 coming out of the general fund, which means some other department or other project has to be pulled back, or maintenance or upgrading, say, the parks would have to stall out for yet another year. And this is just one program this year. So I'm just trying to put that out there. Sorry. I know there's bean counters out there like, yeah, you say it.
Well, no,
It's a situation we have to acknowledge and figure out a way to resolve it. And so, we just want to make sure everybody understands the situation and that we find ourselves in, and trying to find a solution, so.
I think programs for us should be revenue neutral, i.e. we pull in enough money to pay for the program and we don't do the program from a city perspective. That's my personal opinion on it. This puts us in
Other
a.
than the pool.
Right, other than the pool, there's nothing we can do. Well, that's not a program, that's an existing facility.
That is true. It's
Yeah.
an amenity
Yeah,
versus.
it's an amenity.
Yes.
It's really strange in this town that every other youth sport thing is run by nonprofit groups outside of the city. Girls basketball, volleyball, no, in fact, we don't even have a volleyball. Soccer, wrestling, football, cheerleading, they're private groups, boys baseball. They're private groups that do and they fundraise. That's how they pay for these things. That's how they make it work. And the question we have to ask ourselves, are we to be a fundraising organization? Because that's really the only way that this could work. And that can't be Ryan's job, in my opinion. I mean, he has to run this department by himself. So that would leave it to us. And, I certainly don't want to be a fundraiser.
I fundraise for a lot of organizations.
That's exactly, I was going to say.
That I'm, from the city's perspective, it's can we do it? I think we can, but I can't put that on Ryan's
No.
head, because he's got other things that he needs to do to run the department, and fundraising is just not one of those things. I don't know what the final solution here is, but if we're moving forward and you want it to be essentially a net zero, then fundraising is the only other alternative, and it would mean that the parents or someone within the organization that utilize this program would need to get together to help fundraise, or maybe the Parks Foundation might be interested in supporting this. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to bring it to your attention so you can understand the dollars and cents of it all, and why the program may or may not move forward this year, because we're running out of time to find a solution.
As is, when I mentioned the eggnog jog, just to try to pull that off and to help Ryan out. Granted, it's after the pool season, but Ryan has, the maintenance of the parks and everything else to manage, and then planning out like the dog park and so on, that I've pulled 3 other staff members to essentially form a committee to try to get that going. Now, those are 3 people that have their own tasks that they're supposed to be doing, so they're doing this on top of that just to help get things going. So it'd be great if everything was revenue neutral at least, and then we could put on enough programs to be able to get more staff, and again, keep everything so that at least the parks is well funded on its own, but we're not there yet, but we're trying to make those moves now. We'll get there.
All right, any more discussion?
No, we just have to find a solution, like
Yeah.
Mayor said, because I don't think that we should let this go, because the kids love it. My children were always a part of that, so I'm willing to do, maybe speak to the Hispanic community, and they are givers. And we could raise some money, right, Lorena? For their kids to keep playing, because
It's a great program. We don't want it to go away. We want to find a solution, but we, obviously, I think the answer, the ask here is we need to enlist your help on finding that solution, assuming that the school district is unwilling to waive fees because it becomes cost prohibitive. So,
Well, Ryan, just let us know, Ryan, when do they start signing up? When do you start the
Mid-September.
mid-September?
yes, you're about a month away before you start soliciting people for the program.
Right, so you can let us know maybe in the next meeting how they take the increase? And we can,
Yeah, I don't know how to do it yet. It's gonna be tough.
Let me ask you, Ryan, a question about that. So the $2,500, or the practice cost was $2,900. Practices are not on Saturdays, they are only on
Correct.
weekdays. So if they just waived that $10 fee on weekdays,
You'd need actually both, because even with.
well, no, I'm just saying that would cut out $2,900 of the cost, and would
Right.
reduce it to 25.
But
That
you-
would, from 5,400 to 2,500. And our cost is only for the games we play on Saturday and or Saturday.
Excuse me.
So I mean, that's a huge block of it. If they just waived, because they're there. It's not costing them anything else other than the fact, they're there.
If we had a meeting today, one of the things I would probably be pitching is, look, we can cover the cost of a janitor being there on Saturdays, which is like $840. We can cover that. It's the game cost and the practice cost. Even with the $840, we'd be in the hole about $1,100 versus being in the hole $5,700. I mean, it's.
Well, right, I mean,
Right,
if we have to pay for their
it's gotta-
janitor,
it's gotta
that's
work both
understandable.
ways, 'cause,
Yeah.
this.
That's their
this
union
committee-
contract that requires them to
Right.
have a janitor there. I mean, that's understandable. That's a cost they're assuming because of us. I get that. But they don't have to charge us that $10 fee to use their gyms.
No,
They
they
don't. They could waive it,
I mean,
And
case
to
in
help this,
point-
it makes it easier for us to keep this program going.
in the
know?
past, this committee has sought to work with the school, or any program for that matter, and has waived fees in the past.
Right.
But, when one starts charging fees, the city has to look at charging fees to everybody just to break even. And our goal is to try to help grow the community, grow its residents, not to sit there and charge them all the time. And I wish this wasn't happening, but unfortunately it is. And hopefully, cooler heads can prevail and we can get this going, minimal hurt to the city.
Okay, Parks Foundation. Scott?
Not much to report. We did have our golf outing earlier this month. We made a overall profit of about $7,600. Went well. Everybody seemed to have a good time. Didn't make as much on the silent auction as I think we should have. Ryan did an exceptional job getting that set up, and he has a few ideas how to hopefully make us a little more money next year. We're also still looking at having some sort of signature event, hopefully fall of '24. The mud run, Tough Mudder type event is probably not going to be part of that because of the cost. But we're looking at doing some sort of concert event and who knows what may be going along with that. That's about all I have.
Any questions for Scott? Seeing none, let's go. Sorry, I'm looking at writing down notes here. Next on the agenda, new business. Any new business?
I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. I gave Ryan a name of a company to look at for their timed locks. So rather than having to add another duty to the officers to make sure that the bathroom doors are locked at night and unlocked in the morning, these locks, I've used them successfully at other communities. They're set on a timer. They'll lock, say, 6 p.m. and they'll unlock at, say, 7 o'clock in the morning, or whatever time, it's 6:30, 6:15. All you have to do is just set them. But I've handed that information over to Ryan to do more research on that. The other thing is, the mayor kind of hinted at this, or kind of touched on it briefly. Part of our strategic visioning is also updating a lot of our codes, municipal code book, maybe next year, depending on the budget, being able to update our website. But along that line, when it deals with this committee, is coming out with a new updated bike path, walk path, so that we can incorporate that as part of our comprehensive plan. So as we're updating roads, we can, if it's to add a bike lane, let's make sure it's included in the plans rather than an afterthought. Makes it a little cheaper instead of having to add it later. The other part was, I mentioned before, is the sidewalk path. We're trying to identify paths. There is a safe route to school program out there that I've talked to Rob over at Public Works. It's about a $250,000 a year program, grant dollars that could help us improve a lot of our sidewalk paths to the school. A lot of that, in order to even qualify, requires us to get a letter or get supporting information from the school, which again is part of that meeting. This will be the first time in a while we've tried to go this route. I'm hoping that this will be highly successful. Both parties benefit, our citizens and the school, by updating our sidewalks. And one of the things, some of these, the council members have heard me say it, but for our listeners, particularly our Parks and Rec fans out there, is updating or putting together sort of a master plan to updating our welcome signs, our downtown welcome sign, and then also our signs around the parks themselves. If you drive out by Lions Park, you see that sign is quite aged, and I think the backside's already, well, it's starting to bend at the top there. It's the sign's been out there a long time. So part of our plan is to, again, a master plan to have all the signs eventually updated and a little easier to take care of. So it's something we can phase in as a little money becomes available. It keeps them all consistent, by the way. That's the other reason for the plan. So, sorry, didn't mean, I tried to rush through that.
That's okay. So for the next meeting, can we get an update on the tennis court in Shadow Creek, where Rob is with that? And then also, you were looking at the property in Shadow Creek around the
Right,
pond.
and so
Yeah.
I handed that off to Donovan, because
Okay.
that's more his forte.
Perfect.
And I can tell you the tennis court is a low priority
Oh, yeah.
project, but I'll try to get a little better estimate.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, next year is fine, just, know
Right.
when they're planning on
It's
doing it.
off the radar,
Yeah.
it's just on the edges.
All right, any other new business?
Last thing, last section in your packet is the first draft for the rec center survey. And then I looked into all metal pergolas like we talked about in last month's meeting, anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000 depending on finish, size, and height.
I've got some edits I think I'd like to propose for the survey. But it's my first opportunity to really look at it, so I'll give my input to that and for the committee to review next
Yeah.
meeting.
Next meeting, September 18th. Anything else?
When is the survey going on?
It's subject to your approval next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So review it.
Okay.
You can send suggestions to Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't copy anyone else, just send them.
Yeah, send them over to Ryan so he can make those suggested changes and kind of shoot a copy back and forth. That way, it'll save a little more time come the next committee meeting.
One bit of new business I did receive a request from a resident about the basketball court at Mary's Park, because one of the tree limbs was kind of over top of the park and interfering with basketball play, and I believe we've already trimmed that.
Awesome.
But
Sweet.
want to let you know.
Thank you. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Scott, second?
Second.
Rosa, thank you, Rosa. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? None, all right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Two questions for you, or at least one.
All right, now I'm trying to have
We
this
have a
back.
meeting tomorrow instead of next week.
One way or another.